This meeting is duly called to order. There's presence of quorum. Meeting's been duly called and posted in the time and manner required, and there is a quorum present. We have some action items related to the upcoming election. Item A and B kind of go together. Can we handle those all at once? Can we handle them all at once, or do we need to handle them separately? All at once, sounds fine. You want to talk us through A and B? It's pretty straightforward.
Sure. So we have an election this year for districts 1, 3, and 6. District 3 and 6 actually have contested races. District 1 did not draw an opponent, therefore it is not a contested race. Per statute and district policy, the board is afforded an opportunity to cancel an election that does not draw a contested race. And District 1 has not drawn a contested race. So it's up for y'all to cancel that election. If you, I guess if you didn't want to cancel that, just maybe go vote for that, you could, but you do have to go through the process to go ahead and take action on canceling the election for that single member district.
I'll make a motion.
That'd be great.
All right, I move that we approve item 3, and it was A and B.
Yes,
you want to do together, as recommended by the administration in the agenda.
Second. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Washman.
Thank you.
3 years.
It's tough, but
Okay, item C, Superintendent of the Year nomination. We have the opportunity yet again to submit Dr. Crawford for Superintendent of the Year to try and gain some recognition outside of our city about what a great job he's done here in Tyler ISD. And part of that process is we have to have a resolution that we all sign off on, saying that we do think he is an exemplary leader who has made a tremendous impact, positive impact on our schools, our teachers, our staff, and our students. And so that's on the agenda today. Is there discussion on that item that we can make Dr. Crawford even more uncomfortable than he already is? Then I would open up the floor for any discussion or comment.
Well, I don't want to go overboard or anything, but Dr. Crawford, you have to know that we are in awe of what you've accomplished since you've been here. And we're just real proud of you.
Yeah, regardless of whatever the outcome is on this stuff, you know you're doing a good job here, and we appreciate it. So.
I like that. Regardless to the outcome, you are our superintendent of the year.
That's right.
The only
And Director has been for the last several years. So.
I'm glad there's not more than one.
From the day you arrived, and I'll never forget Andy and I having a conversation with you. It was quite interesting, and a lot of challenges were posed, and you have met those and exceeded them.
Some of them. Still some out there.
This is my talk.
You're hard on yourself.
Okay, then I will accept a motion for the resolution for Superintendent of the Year.
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board approves a board resolution to support the nomination of our superintendent, Dr. Marty L. Crawford, as Superintendent of the Year.
Second. Thank you, Ms. Washington. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Gino, since Aaron's not here, I think, does it need to be unanimous? I think.
It just requires the resolution be signed by all parties.
Okay.
By all trustees.
Okay, so then let's ask Aaron to come in and sign it as well, even though he's not present. So
You don't think he'd hold it out?
Now you can talk.
Okay, good. I'll just, y'all know I can't stand these things, but I appreciate it. Y'all know that. And we do have a lot more left. When you're nice to people and firm when you need to be and lead folks, I think you can have success. So it's certainly, while it's a superintendent of the year, it is a district of the year opportunity. And so it's saying that we've got a lot of great people in this room and throughout the 2,650 employees that we have district-wide that have really pulled this off. Certainly leadership matters. It really matters at our campus levels. I believe in the principalship, so our support of them and their buying in has certainly made the difference in where we're at today. We still have a long way to go and a lot more success to have in the future as well. And I will say one thing as far as my candidacy goes. I have worked with the legislative process a lot more than I did prior to, so maybe that'll help me in there. Okay? Just a little inside information down there. Okay.
That's why you've been doing that.
No, that's not why. No, that is not why. It is not my favorite thing. There's something going on this year in Austin that's a little different than we've ever had. So looking out for our best interests, our legislators, our representative and senator have been extremely engaging this year. I'm very privileged for that and very appreciative of that as their interest for Tyler ISD and the great things it can accomplish have been it's been on their mantle while they've been down there during the session, even prior to. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 4, continuous improvement, early benchmark scores.
Yes, we're going to allow the Executive Director of School Improvement to come to the table today and present the benchmark scores for the early benchmark grades. And whenever we say early benchmark grades, it's not like pre-K 1 and 2. It's grades 5 and 8, since they're the first ones out of the box, out of the gate for assessment. And so they're going to report to you here today. We do have some others in the audience that can help as well, but we decided to change the faces in front of y'all and let them get a little dose of this. So we have Jared Bitter, Johnita Ward, and then Dr. Julie Davis that are our executive directors of school improvement. They split up K through Ms. Ward and Dr. Davis split up our pre-K through 5 campuses. Mr. Bitter has all of the middle schools. So we're going to let them go ahead and start with the presentation.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Crawford, board members.
Good morning.
The week of February the 18th, we've given our first round of benchmarks, and we based it off the 2018 STAR release test. Elementary and middle school students took tests in 3 areas, and that was 4th grade writing and 5th grade reading and math. And middle school students were administered the benchmarks in 7th grade writing and 8th grade reading and math. High school students also were administered benchmarks in English 1 and English 2, as those are our upcoming tests, and they'll be given the STAR test in April. The benchmark data is used to help us develop reviews, acceleration, and intervention plans for our students for the upcoming test. Under the new accountability system, you can see here on the screen, we have 4 areas of performance. And of course, the last one not met. The students did not meet the state standard. We have the approaches, which is our passing standard at the lowest level of passing. And that means that those students continuously need to have interventions. We have our students that are meets, and those students are considered on grade level, and they just need maybe some short-term interventions. And of course, we want all of our students to get to that highest level, which is masters, where students need little to no academic intervention. With our early benchmark results, it is categorized here by color, and you can see that it's in the 3 different performance level approaches, meets and masters. The green means that there was some improvement or percent of change of 1 or more. The yellow is maintained, and then the light pink or red is decline. Although we had 6 of those 24 areas that declined, the percent of change was 3% or less. So we're really excited about that. In the green areas, you can note that 15 of the 24 comparison areas improved. And that is from the elementary to middle and high school. Of those, if you look, there's a blue text on your paper there. Their notable changes mean that they increased 5% or more. And we're really excited about the notable changes with the meets and masters.
On the next slide, it's looking at our early benchmark campus results by grade level and content area. With that, if you'll note under writing, the denominator of 12, we had 5 campuses last year that participated in the writing pilot, so that's why you'll see that there. Again, the data is looking at the contents that showed improvement. Overall, we had 13 out of 24 campuses, or those mastery levels that showed improvement. And note that that was at least 1% on the proficiency level. On the next slide, this is looking at early benchmark campus results by performance levels. Again, you'll notice that there's a difference in the denominators. That too, again, represents our 5 campuses that only did not participate in the writing. They were in the writing pilot. The numerator represents the elementaries that improved at least 1%, and the green shows you the performance levels by campus that showed improvement in 2 or more areas, and that represents a total of 34 out of the 51 areas there that are noted. So really what that means to us is that overall we're seeing an increase in students that are performing at the meets and mastery level.
The next slide, we just want to highlight some of the campuses that, like she said, we had a lot of campuses that show growth, but we wanted to highlight some campuses that had considerable amounts of growth, especially in the meets and masters area. So here in writing, we have some of our campuses. I'll point out one in particular. If you look at Douglas, in the meets area, last year at benchmark time, 23% of the students were at the meets level, and this year we have 40% of the students at the meets level. This is our math. The next slide is math. And again, the dark purple, turquoise, and green bars are this year in comparison to last year benchmark, and you can see considerable growth of those campuses in the approaches, meets, and masters area. And our reading. Mr. Bitter is now going to discuss some of the middle school and high school results.
So on that next slide, pretty similar to the one with the elementary results that you saw earlier. Again, at the middle school level, we're talking about 7th grade writing and then 8th grade reading and math, as those are going to be assessed earlier. I think in looking at all that, you know, just really something to note is that at the middle school level, 8 out of our 9 of those tests, we either stayed the same or showed growth, actually showed growth in 5 out of 9 of those. And then overall at the secondary level was 13 out of 15 either stayed the same or showed growth in those areas. You can see there, Robert E. Lee showed growth at both, or all 3 levels in both tests, in the English 1 and English 2. Early college, 1 out of 2 in each one of those. And then John Tyler, something to note there at the master's level, on the approaches, I think one of those, maybe English 1, was right about the same level, 40 and 39, so really tracking on about the same level. So even though it looks like that in the red box there, pretty close to where we were last year at this time, and then moving up at the higher level. So you see there's 7th grade writing, again, similar to the elementary, just some campuses with some noteworthy type of data. You see Hogg there increasing in both approaches and meets with writing. Same with Hubbard, all 3 levels. And then some good data coming out of 3 Lakes, especially at the meets and masters level. At the meets level went from 46 to 55, and at the masters level from 22 to 30. And then all of those are tracking ahead of last year's star performance if you just compare the numbers. Eighth grade math, again, a couple of campuses there, and probably one in particular to highlight more. Obviously, you guys are aware of some of the changes that have come their way and the number of students and the things that come with that. But down just a little bit in approaches in terms of 8th grade math. But if you look there at the meets level, up from 39 to 46. And we've got a lot of kids taking those tests. I mean, close to 400 kids taking that test, so 7% is a significant number of kids. And then up a little bit at the masters as well.
Just for clarification there, so any sort of prior year comparison, is that just the kids who were at Moore last year, or is this the same kids compared to the prior year regardless of where they were attending school?
It's not cohort data.
That's that prior year campus performance,
Okay.
not, like Dr. Hansen said, cohort data.
So I guess you can infer that with the new students coming over from Adobe, they're operating at the same level as what we had for the more students that were there last year without the new students coming from a different attendance zone. Is that what we're saying? Okay.
Yes, sir.
With more students. With more students, percentage total, I mean, that's
Right.
pretty good.
But the next one you see there's 8th grade reading. Probably the most significant growth there at Three Lakes, up 4% in the approaches. Bolter, I think, one to highlight. They've made some changes to the way they do things over there and address some issues, and see an improvement there in all 3 levels for their 8th grade reading. We'll talk a little bit about English 1. English 1, you see there, Early College and Lee. In Early College, some great numbers last year, down a little bit at the master's level, but at both approaches and meets, significant gains. And then Lee up in all 3 areas as well. And that's kind of what I was referring to with John Tyler. Even though you don't see them there at the graph, they're still tracking pretty close to where they were last year in that in English 1, with an increase actually in the master's level performance. I think some of that stuff, worth noting, just a talking point. Just pulled a little bit of numbers from the Early College population and where those students, what zone they come from. So about 2/3 of their students come from the John Tyler area. So that's data that doesn't, go back to the comprehensive campuses, and you can see that the Early College high school performance numbers are very good. So that student population performing at that campus.
So on the next slide, if you'll look at the first 2 columns, it's really comparing last year's benchmark that we took in the spring to the actual STAR test that we took last spring. So what we're excited about to see in that data is the fact that 19 out of the 24 either met or exceeded where we were at benchmarks. So we saw growth in the 4-week focus review we did in those 19 out of 24 areas. So this year, what we're looking at is a couple of things. One, if you compare last year's benchmark to current year benchmark, so that's the first to the 3rd column. If you look at that data, 15 out of 24 already show improvement from last year. So we're already ahead of the game in that aspect. And then also, if you compare the STAR results that we actually had last spring, which is column 2, to column 3, which is where we are this year on benchmarks, we had several campuses that were either close to or stronger than where we were on the actual STAR test. So that's where we were saying earlier that we're seeing that our meets and masters is improving in our student growth, and we're seeing that overall in this data tables. We actually saw that overall 11 out of 24 campuses either met or exceeded last year's STAR performance on this year's benchmark. That 5 out of 24 saw less than a -3% change, which again, we know that's not cohort to cohort, and you're going to have some differences there. So overall, we're feeling good about the next round based on this data for 4th grade writing, 7th grade writing, and then our 5th and 8th grade math and reading. So at this time, if there's any questions or additional questions that you have, we'll be happy to take those, and we thank you for the opportunity to share this data with you.
I have one. Sure. Are we testing and measuring the curriculum that is taught?
Yes.
So the concepts are being taught, and we're measuring those when we test.
We're actually giving the actual release STAR test from last year, 2018 test. So yes, ma'am. We've taught the curriculum up to that point, and then 4 weeks prior to take an actual test, we give the release STAR test.
So we're testing what we taught.
Yes.
Yes, the way the curriculum is laid out, it's completed prior to that
Right,
assessment.
we're finished with the
being
curriculum
administered.
by then.
Okay. Then I guess my question is, elementary, so I want to look at the elementary level. We have several schools, I noticed, only mastering maybe 1 or 3, and that rather concerns me, or 0 or 2. Help me to understand what might be taking place or what is not taking place on those elementary campuses, because if they're missing it, then we move to middle school. So we want to make sure that they're mastering at the elementary level so that they'll be successful in middle school. So kind of help me explain what I'm looking at.
This is a comparison from last year benchmark to this year. So even if it says 0 of 2, it's not necessarily that they did not increase, they maintained. They could have maintained the master's level, or could have had decreased a little bit. But it's not that, in comparison to last year's benchmark data.
And it's not saying that we don't have any students that are currently at the mastery level,
Right.
because we do, based on our benchmark, we have students that are at the mastery level. If you look at the mastery level, just for example, 4th grade writing, it's 84% of passing the test in order to get mastery. So if you think about the 84% for, and again, I'm just going to use 4th grade writing as an example, there are 24 multiple choice items, and then there's the composition that's 8 or 4 points. It's double because of 2 raters, which gives you 8. So out of that 32 points, in order to get mastery, if they got all of the multiple choice right at 24, they would have to get a minimum of 3 on the composition. That means 100% of the multiple choice correct, with the 3 on the composition to hit mastery on writing. So our mastery standards on, I think, 5th grade math and reading are set somewhere in the 87 to 88%. It's high.
I understand.
So just kind of giving a lens through what it requires for the students in those grade levels that we're looking at currently to hit that mastery mark.
So looking at this slide,
Uh-huh.
trying to follow up on Reverend Mason's question. So a school that's in red on this slide could still be meeting standard. They're just not, they haven't improved over where they were at this time last year. Is that correct? So for example, a school like Rice that has 0 out of 2 approaches, they could still be performing very well. They're just, they didn't grow compared to where they were last year. Is that
On the
correct
benchmark.
interpretation?
Yes. Benchmark time.
So are the benchmark tests an accurate prediction of how students are going to do on the STAR test?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, anyway.
Okay, so, no, I don't think that that's what this does is provide us the data to go back and see where we need to go provide the triage to help them get there. So they're accurate in regards to testing the standards. It's actual release STAR test. But this does give us better feedback about where we need to go spend some time, if that makes sense. So yeah, if we took the test tomorrow, they could be a predictor, but we still have a month to go before we actually start these. And this has allowed our staff to go in and do this.
And the state will set the cut scores at some point after this test has been administered.
That's correct.
So we're using these categories based off of last year's cut scores. The commissioner has the discretion to raise or lower those cut scores depending on whatever factors he might choose to use.
Correct.
After we
Whatever
take the
bell
test.
curve gets thrown out there.
Yeah. So,
As a iterated reliability.
which is why we don't live and die based off these scores. They're important, but we recognize that's a moving.
Yeah, I think it's more of an internal
It is.
tool as it is to something to be reported.
So what are we doing differently to help those schools, since you see what the data says? What are you doing differently?
We've got our.
You got your pros in there, all right.
We complete focus reviews and we look at the targeted TEKS. So based off the benchmark data, we look at the targeted TEKS that the students are not doing well with, and we plan 4-week reviews for those particular TEKS. So instead of course, we can't reteach the entire curriculum, then we pick the TEKS that have the highest leverage. So if this TEK has been tested 15 times, then we're going to make sure that the students review that TEK, prior to the test as well. We also have some Saturday schools that are implemented currently. We have 4 campuses that are meeting on Saturday, and it's called Excel Academy, and we're targeting students that need to get to the meets and masters level from those 4 campuses, as well as all the campuses are doing after-school tutorials. We have Saturday
There are
schools.
some extended days.
Absolutely. Before school, there are a lot of things that teachers are doing, our principals are doing creatively to help with that.
And our personnel, Reverend Mason, on that, or on those Saturday Excel Academies, are our, say expert teachers, but our masterful teachers that are actually helping those. So it's not so much the teachers from that specific campus, it's from all over to come help our students. I think those 4 are actually split, I guess, into zones. And so out of our 17 schools, if you're selected to go participate in that, you go there. It's not just the students from that school that are doing that. We also have our curriculum instruction department that are being embedded inside of these schools, just like we do every year. And it's been working. That's one reason that we feel good about the data, we feel good about our plan, because we finally got a little bit of a system here to where we can go and make some improvements in this month before testing. Then you'll see the same thing happen when we get to all the other grades, the AYOs, all you others. We'll do the same thing a month out before they are tested in May, right?
Yes.
And y'all get that report in April, this same report.
Right.
For the other testing.
For the others.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for this slide. I always wonder, when we get these benchmark scores, how it correlates and everything with STAR. And it really does kind of help me see where we jumped last year, from the last benchmark to STAR. And so, and what, I know it's, nothing's concrete, but, typically there's, a little improvement between the last benchmark and STAR, or I don't know the years prior to 2017, 18, but, thanks for putting that slide together.
Yeah, this one right here is a good slide for the board. When you get to those other ones, you start going campus by campus, you can get caught up in the weeds. But right here, this is a very good, for colloquialism there from East Texas, called a common weed. So this right here, I think, can show the board, show the public, show the community in some comparison here where we're at right now. So, and tell the board again, because I think it was an important piece of data or statistic. The differential as far as the net, it's not like we're having these 10-point drops off what we have. You gave an average
3% or less.
Was the greatest.
An average, the grades was a 3% drop, which we can recover that. We feel pretty good about that. We would be red flagging and sirens and alarms going off if we were having one of those.
This is intense time now on campuses.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Intense.
There you go.
Okay, any other questions or comments on early benchmark scores?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful. We have discussion item number 5 on 2 large policy updates. ASB policy and local policy.
Remember when I got here, I asked Reverend Mason, Mr. Birdfield, they were the board officers at that time, how they conducted policy here in Tyler ISD, because in my past school system, we keep these things out, and we go through every one of them. And before you look up, it'd be 3 hours into the board meeting. So I appreciate the way that and the professionalism that Tyler ISD's board has conducted this. So in your packet, you do have this little vantage points right here, just as a reminder that you can take a look at that gives you very broad and general overview of what's in your update 112. But we really rely upon the Board of Trustees to go back and conduct these first readings, I don't know, maybe in your office or maybe on a nice East Texas sunny day at Burkeville Park or something, go find you a park bench and print these off, maybe on your iPad, and take a look at these policies and read them, or perhaps before you go to bed tonight. So this is the first reading. The difference in the two sections, or the difference in A and B are that in A, we have policies that we recommend to the board that are local in nature to actually be adopted. In other words, those are the TASB policies that we are accepting, that we don't have any recommendations for the board to make any changes. B, we do have recommendations on there, and those are the ones that y'all can go and take a look at to see if those are some of the, if you agree with some of the recommendations that we put in there as well. As always, between the first and second reading, you're more than happy to call myself or Gina or Mr. Landis or any of the assistant superintendents if you have any questions about these policies as you're going through them.
Any questions or comments on this discussion item, A or B? Okay, that then concludes the public portion of our meeting. Completed the agenda. We'll now move into executive session.